the futures of maybe 1 million people who sat in class next to your kids are being threatened once again. Just a year after the Supreme Court ruled that President Trump could not legally end the Obama-era policy known as DACA, at least the way he was trying to end it, a federal judge in Texas recently ruled the policy itself is unconstitutional. For nearly a decade, DACA has given protection to undocumented immigrants who were brought into the U.S. as children, dreamers they're called, letting them work, drive, and most importantly, not be deported. But last week, a judge ruled that the Obama administration did not have the legal authority to establish the program to begin with. Only Congress did. President Biden called the decision deeply disappointing and promised to appeal, which means people currently in the program are still protected, at least while that process plays out, but no new DACA applicants will be accepted. And Biden also declared, quote, only Congress can ensure a permanent solution by granting a path to citizenship for dreamers that will provide the certainty and stability that these young people need and deserve. The House did pass the American Dream and Promise Act in March, which would have created such a process, but to no one's surprise, it is stalled in the Senate. So with major gridlock in Washington and another drawn-out legal battle likely ahead, dreamers are facing an uncertainty they know all too well. Joining me now are Lucas Lomba, who was a DACA recipient from Brazil, is now a U.S. citizen. His sister is still in the program. And Allie Rojas is a current DACA recipient from Mexico. Allie and Lucas, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Allie, can I start with you for a minute? How old were you when you came to the U.S., and why did your family leave Mexico?
Yes, thank you so much, Jim, first of all, for having us on the show and talking about this very important topic.
Pleasure.
So my mother was a single mother of two. My sister's also a DACA recipient. I came to the United States. I grew up in Georgia. She was a single mother. We lived in rural area in Oaxaca, Mexico. There was no way to provide. We come from an indigenous village, and it was just impossible for her as a single mother to provide for her two daughters. And there was no other choice, and she wanted to give us a better life.
Lucas, how about you and your family? How old were you when you got here, and why did they come from Brazil?
No, absolutely. I was 8 years old when my family came from Brazil. And I think in a similar story, it was me and my two younger sisters and seeking a better life at the time. There weren't and still aren't many opportunities in Brazil. And both my parents sold everything, completely got rid of basically anything they had just to be able to buy the plane tickets to come to the United States. And
Lucas, staying with you for a minute, you came here, you ultimately went to UMass Boston, you actually both did. You're doing some engineering work now. What has it been like for you until you became a citizen, and now still for your sister, every couple of years having to renew, the possibility during the Trump era that the whole program could be obliterated? What was that like living through that, Lucas?
It was like a cloud hanging over your head at any constant time. Even as I was very fortunate enough to meet my spouse and marry and start the process. But throughout the beginning, when I was a DACA recipient and university, not knowing if I would be able to continue university or be able to afford if DACA disappeared. Because you do end up qualifying for in-state tuition and scholarships you qualify for. Without DACA, there are a ton of scholarships you just can't sign up for.
Well, you were a citizen, as I've said. Now, your sister is not. What if she ended up having to go to Brazil? What if this program got obliterated by a court and not put in place firmly by Congress? What if your sister had to return to Brazil?
So her Portuguese, and she came here at such a young age. She is basically an American. She speaks English. Her Portuguese is not that well. She can communicate, but it's a completely different culture. Her entire community is here. Our entire community is here. Our friends, family. She doesn't know anyone there. She has no, her education level, she can't read Portuguese. It would be completely inhumane to throw somebody in the middle of a place that she has no idea how to navigate.
I think inhumane is an appropriate word. So you're also, Allie, a UMass Boston grad. There's unanimity on that front tonight. I know you're working in a mayoral campaign, I think for Gurley Adrian, who's been on the show.
Yes, I am.
Over there, a big smile, over there in Everett. What has this been like for you? As I said, for those who don't know the program, every 2 years you got to go through the renewal thing. And I assume you felt like many did that Trump might be successful and end the program entirely. What was living through that like?
Yeah, Jim, it was definitely very scary planning your life in 2-year increments, not knowing whether this was your last renewal, and just feeling very overwhelmed whenever something would happen, not knowing whether we were gonna be allowed to stay here. I was in college at that time, so it was very scary. Like, why am I going to school if maybe I'm not gonna be able to use this degree and I'll be sent back to Mexico and I'll have no other choice. So
when you're saying the words, both of you, when you just said, what if I'm sent back to Mexico? I'm assuming that a lot of people watching this are saying, when I asked Lucas the question about his sister going back to Brazil, they'd say that would never happen. Well, if the program is completely obliterated, that is exactly what could happen. What if you had to go back to Mexico, for example, or your sister, Allie? What would that mean?
It's the same thing like Lucas. I'm fortunate that I work with immigrant communities, so I've been able to practice my Spanish a lot more. It's gotten better, but my sister's Spanish is not good. My parents are here. They're undocumented, but they're here. And I don't know my family over there. It's completely different. I don't think I could be accustomed to the way of life over there, and even navigating it, because my whole academic life has been in the U.S. in English. I can maybe speak it, but I wouldn't be able to maybe navigate the professional world as well. And I wouldn't have the opportunities that I have today.
I naively thought that even this dysfunctional Congress and the dysfunctional Congress before this one would deal with this, because so many of us whose kids were, my kids were not born in this country either, but they were adopted and they're now citizens. But I know in their schools, there were so many kids they were sitting next to who were living lives exactly like theirs, like I think you touched upon a minute ago, Lucas. Were you any different than the kids sitting next to you who, by the luck of fate, happened to be born in the United States rather than Brazil?
No, I was friends with them, and it becomes a reality when speaking about certain things, like when they speak about traveling abroad, and I'm like, I can't do that. But I was close friends with them, and we did the same homework, did the same exams, played in the same areas. There really wasn't, it was just a location.
We're all just kids who happen to be born in a different place, who grew up in this country. Allie, since you're in politics, let me ask you, the American Dream and Promise Act, I mentioned that it would put dreamers and those with temporary protected status on a path to citizenship. About a year ago, the Pew Research Center did a survey of people on a question very similar to this. We'll put it up. Do you support or oppose Congress granting legal status to immigrants who were brought to the U.S. illegally when they were children? Support 74% to 24%. And by the way, that includes the vast majority of Republicans as well. Are you hopeful as a student of politics in your current life that this Congress deals with this program? And by the way, if I didn't make clear, I mentioned it. The judge says this is not for an executive to decide, meaning a president. This is for Congress to decide. Are you confident that Congress is finally going to get this right when they're under the gun?
Well, Joe Biden is exactly right. And we need to pass legislation. It needs to go through the proper channels so we can get something that's a permanent reform. The American Dream and Promise Act is not only going to benefit DACA recipients, it's going to benefit TPS recipients, agricultural workers. So I think it would be a huge relief for so many people who are living under the shadows. I have in DACA have immense privilege that I'm able to have the work and the life that I do. And I would like for the opportunity to be afforded for everyone else. I am hopeful. I'm hoping that this is like a jolt to the system, that people wake up and see that DACA is not safe even under this current administration. We need a permanent reform.
So, Lucas, for somebody watching out there who's sitting on the fence and heard both of your family's stories, What do you say to that person as to when they're deciding whether to call their legislator to ask them to vote yes to make this the law of the land? What do you say to them?
The dream, trying to kind of create a pathway, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it would. Pathway to citizenship.
I actually plead that they do and go forward and reach out to whoever they need to reach out to, really push for something like that to happen, because in the current moment is just full of uncertainty. And as mentioned, even with DACA, you still don't feel safe. You have no pathway. So something like that would be extraordinary. It would be phenomenal and would really benefit everyone. It would allow so many people to have a structure in their lives that is not currently there. So I actually, please.
You said it beautifully. Lucas and Allie, we're lucky to have you here, and I wish you a lot of luck, and I hope members of Congress do the right thing for your families and hundreds of thousands of others like yours. Good to meet you both.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.